Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for Closing the Wealth Gap. The one show, maybe the only show that shows you how to close the wealth gap in your own life with the man who's done it for many, our wealth coach himself, Tyrone French. Hey, Tyrone.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Closing the Wealth Gap. I'm your host, Tyrone French. Thank you for tuning in today. And if you value this content, please do me a favor. Just go to closingthewealthgap.net. Hit that follow button. Also, check out tyronefrench.coach. We have some free information on there for you. We have an app that you can actually put into your phone to stay in touch with us to get our updated content. And with that, I'm going to bring in my producer and good friend, Mr. Paul Roberts.
Hey,
how you doing, Paul Roberts?
I'm doing good. I'm trying to stay dry. It's a wet day here in Southern California.
Hey, we need the rain.
Boy,
I'm loving it. I am loving it. Hey, I was out for a little while. I just want my listeners know that I had surgery on my eyelid. And I had to see a plastic surgeon. And before he did the procedure, he told me I was going to be black and blue. I had no idea I was going to be looking like I was in a bar fight, man.
You sent me a picture. The whole thing swelled up and everything. It looked horrible. Oh, my goodness.
It looked like I caught a fastball going 95 miles an hour, man.
Right. So,
but hey, I tell you what, though, I was registered to be in San Diego last weekend for the Military Wealth Summit, and was hosted by a gentleman named Douglas James. I'll get into that in more detail in a minute. But one of the featured guests was Robert Kiyosaki,
the guy you talk about all the time.
As a matter of fact, my book, Closing the Wealth Gap, I dedicated my book to Robert Kiyosaki. So when I found out he was going to be there, man, I pulled out my sunglasses from Long Beach to San Diego, and I attended that meeting. And man, I was sitting there looking like Stevie Wonder the whole time, but I was loving it.
And you got to go backstage and hang out with them and all this stuff. You're the wealth coach, of course. I mean, you didn't just sit in the back of the room here. You got to interact with the guy.
Well, here's the thing. He's a busy man, very extremely busy. I had a VIP access pass. He was there on a Saturday night, and what they did was they changed the venue. And I had a lot of things going on during the weekend, but they changed the venue. It was supposed to be in La Jolla, and last minute they changed the venue. And I'm just going to be honest with you, we were actually in Little Italy.
Oh, and Little Italy, okay,
yeah, Little Italy. And again, nice area in San Diego. And the guy Douglas James, he had it in his actual penthouse. So we're in the penthouse and we're enjoying everything. We're having a session from, I guess it was 9 to 5, was going a little bit over. And so they gave us an opportunity to, after the session, they were going to have, that's when Robert was coming in that evening.
Right.
And so I leave Little Italy and go back to La Jolla where I was staying. And man, I said, I'm going to take me a nap for a few minutes. I'm going to get up and get dressed and go to the
me and my swollen eye.
And man, I woke up at 3:00 that morning. So I said, well, hey, look, it's no problem. He's going to be speaking tomorrow. And so I'm going to go in and, go ahead and dialogue and meet the guy. And he was the first speaker of the day. And man, the presentation was it was very interesting. It was very interesting. I'll tell you this though, he does not suffer fools well. I mean, he's very direct.
He doesn't hold back his opinions of other fools, he thinks here. Huh?
He's very direct, but very, very giving as far as his information. I learned so much in that presentation, but a couple of times, a couple of guys got up and they got off subject a little bit, and he pretty much told them, hey, that's not what we're talking about right now. Have a seat.
And, was he in the military before? Was he ever in the military?
He's a Marine.
Oh, there you go.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Always a Marine. There you go.
Marine fighter pilot from Vietnam.
Yeah.
And he shared some of those war stories, man. And again, great time. Wouldn't change it for the world. And after he spake, or after he gave his presentation, his bodyguards, or the bodyguards that were there, escorted him out. and I really didn't
He
have an
has
opportunity.
bodyguards and
Oh
everything, or
yeah,
handlers and
yeah,
big guys, and yeah.
big guys, huge. Matter of
Wow.
fact, I called a couple of them tiny. They kind of laughed a little bit. I kind of flexed, because I've been working out a little bit for the last week
Hey,
or so.
Tiny, come
So I,
here.
man, but again, great weekend, great humored. But this guy is he's just a wealth of knowledge, and I wouldn't have missed being in that room and listening to him speak for the world.
Well, how many of us get a chance to see the? I mean, this guy's written. Tell me the book. Isn't he the guy that writes Rich Dad Poor Dad and all, or Rich?
Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, just a host of books. Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Cash Flow Quadrant,
Yeah.
Rich Dad Guide to Investing. He wrote a book called Fake, talking about fake teachers. You have a lot of professors that will talk about business, but they never ran a business before.
Yeah. Right.
He wrote a really good book called The Business of the 21st Century, that talks about network marketing and why he think every
That's right.
entrepreneur should get into network marketing, and not from a business point of view as far as earning a whole lot of money, but as far as getting that world class education,
Mm-hmm.
understanding marketing and sales, and getting the rejection, so that when you can apply those same skills to your own business. And it's a great business school. I mean, he even wrote a book about business schools. So again, just a wealth of knowledge, man. His my library is littered with his material, DVDs, CDs.
Well, only
Love the
the
guy.
wealth coach gets to meet another wealthy guy like this. We're ordinary folks. We don't get to go hang out with people like that.
And and the price was right. The price was right. But again, it all happened because of Douglas James and the Military Wealth Summit. And let me just give you a little background on what these guys do.
Yeah.
He's prior service. A lot of guys in the room were veterans from various branches. There was a lot of guys that were in there, and gals, women on active duty,
Hmm.
that were transitioning out of the military. So what he's doing is he's affording these veterans to get, so that they can hit the ground running. A lot of veterans make that mistake of going through that transition, not really knowing what they want to do. And
And doing nothing, coming out and then saying, now what do I do?
a lot of times they don't have the resources or the luxury, or the resources, to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what they want to do. And so once they get into that
Have I
dialogue,
heard
that
this
downward
before
spiral.
somewhere? Have I heard this before somewhere? It seems like I'm going to go back to the library, and when you had your buddy French on here and some others, you guys were harping this one pretty
You
heavy
mean
here.
Penton, Master
Penton.
Chief Penton?
You're French, yeah, Penton. You guys all call each other by your last name, French.
Yes.
Penton, yeah, right. And yeah, you guys were hitting this pretty hard, as I recall. This theme, this was, again, here I got Nostradamus here, the guy predicting the future here. You've been hitting this theme for years, that the military does a heck of a job taking people from all walks of life and turning them into a cohesive unit and achieving the impossible. You're flying planes, you're running aircraft carriers, you're delivering, things on time, on target, all these amazing things you do. But their goal isn't to transit. Thanks. Now we got what we need. Go figure out what to do with this. And you come out of the service with probably not a lot of savings, with probably somebody's taking care of your food and your accommodations and told you what to do and where to go. And you've got this skill that doesn't seem like you can transition it to the real world. I was an aircraft missile guidance system operator. What does that have to do in the outside world? And
Right.
and they come out, shocking number of them, not just post-traumatic stress and the difficulties of serving, but just not know what to do. Homeless, broke. Lots. I hear this story over and over again since you
Yes.
brought it to my attention.
Yes. And a lot of times, again, it's not that the government resources aren't available to them; they just don't know how to access those resources.
What
And
to
so,
do?
like I said, what Douglas James is doing down there in San Diego, man, I applaud him. I'll be a part of that organization. If he has a wealth summit every 3 months or every 6 months or every year, I'll be attending that wealth summit, because it's just the speakers that he had come in, real life, not fake speakers, but people that were talking the talk and walking the walk. Man, I'm just, I'm proud to be a part of what he's doing, and I would, in the future, I would like to really participate actively in what he's doing, not just, as a spectator, but somebody that directly contributes to
I
what he's
think you
doing,
could,
because
because
it's
you
just
you
phenomenal.
certainly know a lot about the subject. You weren't a veteran of just one service, of two services. You're the only person I ever know served in two branches of the military two times. You've seen it from two different perspectives here, and so many. Since you opened my eyes to this, since you've talked about this, I've had other people come through the station. I pay attention more to this. Shocking number of veterans come out who, not just because of stress and injuries, but because of what? They're not prepared. They're not
Right.
thinking a certain way. And so they don't know what to do, how to get a
Right.
job. They don't know how to run their own finance. They haven't saved all that money they could have saved during that period
Yes.
of time. They
Yes.
come out with nothing. And because they just blow it or spend it or whatever. They don't think of that, my future.
Well, not
And
all not all veterans come out unprepared, but a, a lot of them do. And
yeah,
again, we can't save everybody, but it's a lot of them that we definitely can save. And again, the seed programs like that are in place, that are teaching these guys how to become entrepreneurs, how to become business owners, and not just business owners, but successful business owners. Because again, while you're in the military, you are pretty much dependent on that system. You can become institutionalized in a short amount of time.
that's the
And so
word,
now that once you
institutionalized,
get out,
dependent on a system to take. They
yes,
feed me, they clothe me, they tell me where to go, they tell me what to do. I don't have to think for myself, right?
yes. So a lot of these guys, I mean, and Robert said it himself. I mean, a lot of these guys, they are the entrepreneurs of the future. They're the entrepreneurs of the
You would think
future.
so, because they've been taught to do the impossible. They've been taught the team to to uh, to train others, to lead others, to enlist others, to work as a team, to achieve the impossible. They have the skills that I don't have, didn't have coming out of college. I might have had the book smarts, but I didn't have any people skills. I didn't have to work with anybody. I didn't have to do anything. And so it's not that they are without, they've got real strong people skills. What
Yes,
they haven't figured out is how to use them for their benefit.
exactly. And I would tell anybody, the military, when I joined the Navy, saved my life. It got me out of a bad environment, uh, sent me overseas. An accomplishment was just making it through basic training of understanding what my limitations were, and then being able to drive past those limitations to be aboard an aircraft carrier, which was, I mean, the first time I stepped on the deck of the flight deck of an aircraft carrier was the USS Ranger. uh, I had to hold on to the life jacket or the life vest of the person that was taking me up there. And man, it was just an experience where you couldn't even hear yourself think. And it was like a symphony of chaos.
Yeah, right. So it seems like, well, the pictures I've seen of it. Yeah.
But after a period of time, you just got used to it. You got used to it. And I remember one time we had a Marine photo reconnaissance plane coming in, and the nose gear wouldn't go down. So
Oof.
we had to rig the barricade, just like on Top
Yeah.
Gun Maverick.
Right.
At the end of the movie, they rigged the
Right.
barricade.
Right.
Real life, we had a Marine photo bird coming in. We had to rig the barricade, and we were up there, and it was just, they had volunteers. You have to volunteer to go up there at that point. And I volunteered to go up there, and again, because if the plane blew up with all that ordnance and everything, and gas and munitions, I mean,
Oof.
you can only run so far
Yeah. Right.
before
Yeah.
you got to turn around
Yeah.
and fight
Right.
the fire.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. So all that you taught about yourself, everybody has the same experience, and yet when they come out, why are they so lost? They
But
don't
that's
know
my whole
what to
point.
do.
I mean, when I got out of the military in 1988, my first job interview was with IBM,
Hmm.
and I was so cocky at that point where I really thought I was going to ace the exam that day. Gave me an opportunity not to take the exam that day based on the interview, or come back the next
I
day.
can do anything here. Yeah. Bring it on.
Not me. I was gung ho. It's like, well, give me the exam now. Well, in hindsight, is 2020. I should have taken that time
Yeah.
and taken the advice, the suggestion to go back and study, brush up a little bit. needless to say, I didn't get the job, but I made a very good impression on the
Mhm.
interviewer, and he gave me some tips and said, "Well, hey, come back in 6 months, and we'd love to have you." But I didn't have 6 months to wait, so I found out about a job fair in Long Beach, California, at McDonnell Douglas. And this particular time, I had on the right suit, the right shirt, the right tie, the right portfolio in my hand. I had tightened up my resume a little bit more. And one of the inspectors from quality assurance saw me, pulled me out of line, asked me why I was there, told him my background in the military, avionics, electronics, communication, navigation. He pulled me out of the line, walked into the building, and they were having a debate with a union steward, and they came back and said, "Well, we can't bring you in at grade one, but we can bring you in at the top of the grade three."
Mhm.
And Paul, I was, I was like in heaven. I was electrical inspector on the MD-80 line for McDonnell Douglas. 25-year-old kid making more money I've ever made in my life. And 90 days after that, Paul, I was promoted to a quality assurance administrator because of my leadership skills, and I was labeled a people person. And I had a ball in that job. I ended up working on the transition over to the military side, and I worked on the first two prototypes of the C-17 aircraft.
But why is that experience not the norm? Why do there are examples like that where people come out and say, here's the leadership, here's the technical skills I've got, and it's a perfect fit. Why do I hear so many come out and become homeless and they're working at 7-Eleven or something and they had some big job in the military here?
Well, again, it just goes back to preparation. I mean, I was ready. I was ready to get out of the military. I was ready for that next step, and I was not going to take no for an answer. So the first no I got, I mean, for me, it's like, you go up to the no's to get to the yes. And just so
Right.
happened, the first no catapulted me to this job fair at McDonnell Douglas, and the second interview was a yes.
But you and Penton talked about how guys come out broke and they've had great jobs. They just say, but you get all these signing bonuses. You should be ahead of the game. And instead they're behind.
Because there's no money management
Yeah,
taught in the
that's it.
military.
That's it.
There's just no money management. And again, I was guilty of the same thing. My stereo equipment, I had the best amplifiers and tuners and speakers that money could buy.
Right.
Turntables. I drove a beautiful sports car, uh, jewelry and clothing. I mean, I looked like a millionaire when I was in the military. On a E5 budget. I lived in Mission Valley at the time. Had a roommate who was the E5. They gave us a housing allowance. We had a clothing allowance. And again, my roommate, his dad worked for RTD. Remember the public transportation.
Yeah, right.
So he was always on his son based on discipline and budgeting and things like that. So even my roommate, I mean, to this day, this guy is top 1%. Again, coming out of the military, he's like just a financial genius. So with us, being roommates and sharing stories, and it helped me to whereas when I knew I was getting out of the Navy, I wasn't dead broke. Now again, I had the time of my life when I was in the military. I'm a young man, single. I had the time of my life.
But it's living for today.
In the
It's
Navy.
not. It's not managing your money for tomorrow here. So
Right.
many people tell me that we've had veterans that come in here and done different shows, and they say they come out behind the curve. Somebody else has not only been to college, but they've got career. They've been working in a job for 4, 5, 6 years. You come out and they say, "What have you done?" "Oh, I worked in an aircraft carrier, did avionics." "Yeah, well, what does that have to do with this job? How do I slot you in somewhere?" So they don't see that too many job employers as transferable skill, when
Right.
in fact
Exactly.
it shows a tremendous amount of creativity, people skills, leadership skills, all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But you ran avionics, and I can't even explain what it is. How do I fit you into our organization? We don't have a job like that here. You were fortunate to find something similar,
So I found something similar. Exactly.
but most
And
don't. Yeah.
that was my holy grail.
Right.
Is being having the background, but finding something similar to that. And for me, it just worked. And then again, I stayed there for a few years, and then I ended up going into finance. because I've always wanted to work in finance, and ended up going to New York Life Insurance Company, and got my insurance license
So a
back in
big
19.
need. We somehow assume that veterans are well taken care of. The veterans are there to transition them out. And what I'm hearing is too often these guys and women are leaving unprepared for that transition
Yes, yes,
financially, how to manage their
yes.
money. But we had a woman in here a year or two ago. She claimed she was one of the first female helicopter pilots, I think in the Marines or something like that,
Hmm.
and achieved all this great success and notoriety. And she came on, she admitted, she said, when I left the military, I was bankrupt within a year. I didn't know how to save money, spend money, do anything else here. Everything been
Right,
done for me. And she had to rebuild herself back up. She eventually became kind of a personal growth coach and stuff here because she felt
right,
such a need like you do to kind of give back and work on this. And I thought,
right.
wow.
Yeah, I mean, story after story after story. So again, I applaud Douglas James as far as what he's doing in San Diego, and also it takes a great team, and he has an assistant. Her name is Victoria Wade. I would be remiss by not giving her a shout out because you're only as good as your people.
Yeah, well, that's
You're
what you
only as
guys in
good
the
as your
military
people.
learn. Yeah, you can't do this alone, right?
And he's proven that what he learned from the military, he transitioned into his professional business, and he has some really really good people around him. But Paul, I'm gonna digress just a little bit,
Okay,
because
couple minutes left
when
here.
when when Robert Kiyosaki was speaking,
Yes.
he made some good points, and I kind of stood up. Now he never threw his shoe at me when I was talking.
You might
You
have
know,
wanted to,
he
but
he never told me to sit down or anything and shut up. But a couple of things he agreed with, a couple of things that he said, and Paul, it goes back to this show. It's like my aha moment, courtesy of Robert Kiyosaki.
okay.
And what he talked about is the gold standard, how Richard Nixon had taken us off the gold standard in 1971, which made all currencies at that time fiat currencies, meaning they were backed by nothing.
Right. Just
Okay.
made up.
So
Fiat. Just made up. Right.
right, made up. So basically, the our dollars are, they're worth less and less because the more we print, the more that it's becomes, think it's based on inflation.
Right.
We have inflation because we have so many dollars in circulation that it drives up the prices of things. And it's not just the dollars being produced, but also bank credits. But he mentioned that back in 1971, we were taken off the gold standard, and a lot of countries got scared because we had this war going on in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and other countries thought that, again, the dollar was backed by gold at the time. A lot of countries thought that, well, the United States don't have enough gold to back all these dollars that they're producing, so they started asking for their gold back. And so to protect the United States and the gold reserve from the speculators, Richard Nixon in 1971 took us off the gold standard. But he also mentioned back in 1974, he mentioned the ERISA law. And what he was saying is that with ERISA, that made the pension, that retirement money available to Wall Street.
Mm.
And so you see a correlation between the stock market now and all this money that's flooding the stock market
Because all that
based on
bunch of money
people's
they
retirement
save, rather
plans.
than put it in a bank, they invest it and try and earn income on it here.
Yes. So again, but he again, I never tied these things together, and I held up my hand. He pointed to me. I stood up, and I said, I never understood the correlation between the ERISA law, the gold standard, and China, because he mentioned China based on a world power and everything. But let me tell you what the common thread is and the common denominator. Richard Nixon was the first sitting president to officially go to China
Yeah, of
in 1972.
course,
And
right,
all the historians know this.
right.
These are facts. This is not something. This is not fiction or
He was
something
famous for
that's
that.
made up.
Yeah, Nixon goes to China. I was
Yes,
there.
these are facts. So I can remember when China was considered an emerging market. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
China was getting flooded with dollars, with currency from all over the world. And so over a period of time, because people wanted that cheap labor,
Yeah,
and they wanted to trade with China.
right.
And so now we look at China as far as this superpower that's threatening democracy, but we created that monster.
We did. We went and built that. I could tell you lots and lots of stories of that period of time. I remember living through it and seeing it close up through many people's eyes, the businesses we did and people I knew that went over there and made fortunes off of that.
Yes, exactly. So again, Richard Nixon. Again, I don't have a horse in this race. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a registered independent. But I'm for, based on policies as far as people that's gonna do the job and do the job right. Let's fix this stuff. But you're talking about a Republican administration that went to China and opened up China. He mentioned, this came out of his mouth, Robert Kiyosaki, that in 1971, Richard Nixon took us off of the gold standard, which made all currencies at that point fiat currency. Republicans. He also mentioned ERISA as far as the pension plans, all this pension money going to Wall Street back in 1974. And he said, well, I don't know if it was Richard Nixon or Gerald Ford. I said, well, yeah, it was Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford is the one that signed the ERISA law into, or the Employee Retirement Income Security Act into law in 1974. And the reason that Gerald Ford did that is because Richard Nixon resigned his presidency.
Right.
Had he not resigned, he would have been there to sign ERISA. So again, that was my aha moment, because it just made sense as to everything that was going on. And then I looked at, there was a law called Graham-Leach-Bliley. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. I don't remember that, no.
We went into deregulation. And so Bill Clinton, it was the sitting president at the time, when he signed Graham-Leach-Bliley into law that allowed community banks, investment banks to purchase insurance companies and for these banks to invest in Wall Street. And yes, Bill Clinton signed that law, but it passed with a supermajority. It was veto proof. So he basically, I mean, he could have vetoed it symbolically, but the law still would have passed because it had a supermajority.
Let me go one step further, because I vividly lived that period of time. I actually wrote my senior honors thesis on the Nixon-Kissinger foreign policy in college.
Did not know that.
I'm pretty into Richard Nixon here. And there's actually a Wikipedia entry called Nixon Shock. And you can look this up, and I'll just read the first line. The Nixon Shock was a series of economic measures undertaken by President Nixon in 1971 in response to increasing inflation, which included the most significant of which were wage and price freezes. That was the other one nobody talks about. A Republican put wage and price freezes. We're going to freeze everything here because it's going up too fast. Surcharges on imports. We're going to charge more on imports. And the unilateral cancellation of the convertibility of the United States dollar to gold, taking us off the gold standard. Those were shocking. These are not Republican, which you think of as pro-business and no regulation and all. He also created the EPA, which the Republicans today are trying to disassemble here. He did all of these things that now the Republicans rail against over and over and over and over again. It was a Republican president that did this. Wage and price freezes, taking us off the gold standard, creating an environmental protection agency here.
Yes.
And this guy was a conservative. I mean, this was not, that's why he went to China. He opened up China, which started the flood.
Again, I'm not bashing Republicans. I'm not bashing Democrats. I'm not bashing independents. I'm just saying it is what it is. These are facts.
Yeah.
And some people are willing to face facts and others are not. And so when you start, saying, well, the Democrats are this and Democrats are that, and you start talking about communism and Marxism and all these other things, you got to kind of take a look at cause and effect relationships. What caused all this stuff? And if it happened during a Republican administration, then fess up to it. Own up to it.
The other one that always drives me crazy is the common thing is tax and spend Democrats. All they do is blow up the budget, and now Republicans again want to rein in the federal government. And yet when they're in power, under Reagan, under Bush 1, under Bush 2, and under Trump, the federal deficits went up faster and farther than each administration went faster and farther. The government didn't shrink. It grew. The budget deficit didn't shrink. It dramatically blew up. When they get
Yes.
in power, they don't do any of the things when they're out of power that they preach about.
And because of inflation, the budget, the deficit is going to skyrocket because you need more dollars. It's just a residual effect of inflation. And so everybody started talking about the debt ceiling, which is not a problem until another administration comes into office. Then you want to hold it hostage.
Right.
But again, the debt ceiling is just based on us paying our bills.
Yeah,
It's stuff that we already bought.
it's nuts, right? It's saying you went and ran up this credit card. Do I want to pay it now? Well,
Exactly.
I only authorize you, Tyrone, and my group here spend so much money. Okay, and then you go out and spend a ton more, and you come back with the bills and say, "Sorry, I spent more," and you say, "I'm not going to pay the bill." Well, you already spent it. Why?
And so what does that do to your credit?
It ruins your credit, and
It
then
ruins your credit.
and-
So
and-
if we could, if you know that you shouldn't be doing that on a micro level, then you should understand that it shouldn't happen on a macro level,
you want to
on
stop
a national level.
spending. Stop spending before you spend it. Don't argue after you've already spent it whether you're going to pay the bill.
Well, I tell you again, just listening to Robert Kiyosaki on a Sunday morning, and the way he was breaking this stuff down, Paul, and the definitions, defining words and terms, because it's really important that when you start talking about financial terms and that you understand the meaning of these words, because they have power. They have. I mean, if you put an S in the front of in the front of the word, or put an S in front of word, you have sword.
Wow.
You have sword.
Wow.
And so, some of these words, if you don't understand the meanings, and they're devastating based on your personal economy. And that's the point that he was trying to make. But again, I got my aha moment when he started naming these dates and situations and laws, and it all came together. And I was like, wow, now I understand the cause and effect relationship of everything that's going on. And what do you do? How do you fix this? How do you fix it? And again, this show is about information and for educational purposes. It's not based on it. I'm not giving you investment advice on this show.
No.
Okay. But you would do yourself a favor. You're doing yourself a disfavor by not putting insurance on your currency. And the way you do that is by putting yourself back onto the gold standard. Start taking some of this fiat money.
Only so much of that stuff. They can't just print more gold and more silver.
And I mean, what was the bank that the regulators had to shut down?
Silicon Valley
Recently?
Bank, I think. Yeah. Is that
Yeah.
the one that's under trouble here? And that was the bank in Silicon Valley that all the big deals were run through. That was a private, kind of a small private bank that had huge resources to fund Silicon Valley's growth. A lot of deals were run through that bank.
We don't want to run on the bank. We don't, because again, the banks don't have the money. It's not there. It's not there. And so when you get into hyperinflation, the money that you thought that you saved, that you thought you put under your mattress, won't even buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Won't even buy a gallon of gasoline
The-
if you can get it.
The dollar's still there, but it takes more of them to buy that loaf of bread. It devalued. It was worth less.
So you don't pay that. You do not play that game by holding physical gold and silver because it maintains its future purchasing power. As a matter of fact, I just call it currency insurance. That's what I call it.
You mean this stuff isn't worth anything? That says $1 on it right there, boy. That's backed by the United States government. Take that
Yeah, but
anywhere in
also
the world.
Look at what it says: a Federal Reserve note.
Yeah,
It's a Federal Reserve note.
it's a problem.
There used to be silver certificates where you could actually take that note, take that certificate into the bank
Right.
and get an ounce of gold for it, or an equivalent, a equivalent amount of gold for that.
So
for
in
that dollar.
God we trust. Everybody else has to pay cash.
I was in a squadron on Guam called VQ1, and our motto was "In God we trust, but everyone else we monitor."
Okay.
I love it, buddy.
All right. Well,
Hey, we're running out of time, man.
only
but,
you get to go hang out with Robert Kiyosaki. Thanks for sharing that with us here.
Man, again, great weekend. I wouldn't have traded that for the world, man. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
All right. Give us your how do they find you, and we'll close out the show here.
Well, again, what I'd like for you guys to do, if you like this content, just go to closingthewealthgap.net and hit that follow button. If you can actually become a contributor to this platform, we'd love to have you. I mean, this is actually a community here, and we love putting out this information, putting out this content, and it just, let us know that you support us. Let us know that you like quality content. Go to closingthewealthgap.net. It's in the background on my screen. If you forget, go to TyroneFrench.coach. We have a lot of, matter of fact, there's a free financial plan, complimentary, world class, to a company called Saveology. Just videos, articles, all kind of stuff that's going to help you to put you in the right direction, to whereas you can literally close the wealth gap in your life and the lives of future generations.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. That's our show for this week. Closing the Wealth Gap. The one show, the only show that shows you how to take control of your financial future. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OCTalkRadio.net.